Hi guys, welcome to today's session. Thank you so much for joining. We are trying out a different time slot. We usually meet on Saturday mornings, but today we're meeting on Saturday afternoon, at least in Kenya. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a very fun, productive session. Today we're joined by Agata, sorry, and she's the leader of the Poland Tableau user group. She's also a Tableau ambassador, and we're going to learn about user experience psychology, specifically for dashboard designers. Quick agenda, we will have our speaker session, and we'll have a quick Q&A at the end in case you have a few questions for her. So we always bring this up before we get to anything because I think it's important for us to always recap what we're hoping to do in our user group for the next few months. Expose you to the four different goals that we have, or mission that we have, which is networking, meeting members of the Tableau community, the data farm, and we share different ways you could meet people through the Slack channel, where you could share your different visualization, get some feedback, meet other people out there who are really sharing really good work on the Tableau public profile. Learn from them, share your work with them, get some feedback. So that's one way we really hope to expose you over the next few months. Events and workshops like this, where we learn from a Tableau expert. And it's very exciting to have you here today. And I think it ties back to skills building as well, because this is one of those sessions that's a bit technical. We talk about how to improve our skills, specifically on the design side. I think the beauty of Tableau, it really helps you build out your storytelling skills beyond your ability to build a simple chart here and there. It really helps you figure out how to tell your story in a very impactful way. And that's also a big thing about the community. There's so many people out there who have creative ways of sharing their stories. And today will be a session where we learn from someone who does just that. And then the last thing is community. Actually, everything ties back to community. So as we continue having sessions like this, we hope that people keep joining, telling everyone they know, at least in Kenya, about these sessions and how productive and helpful they are. And over time, our community will continue to grow. So I will hand it over to Tony so he can introduce our amazing speaker, and then we jump right into the session.
Thank you, Mary, for that. So today's speaker, guys, I'm very much excited to welcome her. Her name is Agata. So small info about her. She's a 25 Tableau ambassador, and she also leads the Poland Tableau group. Currently, a content trainer at New Data Labs. And before that, previously, she has worked as a freelance journalist. I think that is the reason why she's so good at storytelling. A European funding specialist, and a foreign direct investment analyst. Agata is fascinated with color theory. She'll tell us more about that. Storytelling. And a quick note, Agata did a poll a few days ago on our tag LinkedIn page, and storytelling was one of our talks. So I think mention a thing or two about that. And ways to share knowledge. Apart from collecting Tableau certificates, Agata, you should tell us how many certificates you have. I'm curious about that. Playing also the guitar. Last but not least, she's a happy wife and a mother of two. So I'm also curious how you're able to juggle all that together. So guys, help me with Agata. And Agata, when you're ready, take it over.
Okay, thank you, Tony, a lot for the introduction. How do I do that? I have absolutely no idea. I just do. And well, for the certificates, I guess the actual are free, but I have passed many certificates before that are not actual anymore. Plus I have worked with the Tableau consultant certificate with creating it. So yeah, more or less that's the story. Yeah, and one more fact that might help you to find me in LinkedIn, Tableau, or anywhere else. Some call me Tableau witch or Tableau fairy. And if you see my icon, that's it. I tend to saying that I'm Tableau witch because I'm pretty big person and I can't imagine the wings, how big they would have to be to carry me. So rather Tableau witch, but that's with what you can find me in internet, provided you won't be able to pronounce my surname. It's tongue breaker. Let me share my screen now. So my name is Agata Mężyńska, which is unpronounceable to anybody who's from outside Poland. Don't worry about that. If you look for Agata connected to Tableau, there is just two of us. You have big odds to find me. Okay, so I will be talking about user experience psychology for dashboard designers. And the first thing is, what is the user experience by itself? Well, user experience is the set of experiences, impressions, which one person has with some product. These impressions might be positive, they might be negative, but they should be deliberately designed to make working with something enjoyable, intuitive, and fast. Good definition, great. Does it apply to building dashboards? Does it apply to Tableau? It actually applies to everything. So to software, to websites, electronic devices, Tableau dashboards, they just should be intuitive, easy, and nice to work with, and people should like their work with the tools. Okay, so that's for the definition. And then there is a question, where is the idea of that presentation from? So originally, a couple of years ago, I have read a fantastic book by John Jablonski. The book is called Loss of UX. And yeah, there are described a few of these, and they are really beautifully discovered. So then I prepared a presentation. I loved it, and I forgot about it for another 2 or 3 years. And then last year I listened to other presentation by my colleague from Poland, Bartek Ciołek, who presented exactly same subject in completely different way. And after the presentation, I thought, wow, that's interesting that you can do something so fantastic about the same subject in completely different way. And then I thought that I still feel that both in his and mine presentation, something was missing. So what I will show you today will be insert of the missing element, and I will mention what is that closer to the end of my presentation. But to start, someone asked if, Tony mentioned that someone asked before if it's not too heavy subject, it's really, it sounds like lots of scientific terms, names, dates, etc. True. And I will mention these, but I do not expect you to memorize them. Actually, what I will want you to do is to memorize the very first effect I will be talking about and the very last of them. And as I have searched through the website, I will go back to this slide for a moment. Well, originally, it was, I think, below 20 different effects. I chose some of them, and it was perfect. And then I looked at the website that resulted from the book. You've got its link here. And there are, I think, at least 30 different effects, psychological effects described. And when you read through them, they are like big labyrinth where everything is interconnected. One thing comes out of the other, but also of three other things, and it gets terribly complicated. And that's something that really annoyed me. So what I would like you to do today is to show you the logic of chain of different effects that come up one from another. And I think you should follow, first of all, the logic. Names, stories, terms, dates, they are just points on our way. What is important is logic. If you will remember more or less why things look one way or should look one way or another, you for sure will be able to use it in your work. And that's the most important that I would like to achieve today. So we will start from cognitive load, a little more about that in a moment. We will start with excessive aesthetic usability effect, a lot more about that in the end. And on our way, it will be like a string of pearls, one effect after another. And there is even a name for the effect which I wanted to use to make you remember the first and the last. It's called position effect. And that's the effect that makes us memorize way more easier than other things, the first one in a row and the last one in a row. So we'll start with cognitive load. We get to aesthetic usability effect, to completely scientific terms, but on our way we will follow certain logic. Okay, so what's the cognitive load? That's the term that actually starting being used somewhere in 70s and was more precisely described, I guess, in late 80s. And the idea is that you need certain resources, cognitive resources, to be able to understand an interface and interact with it. And the problem is that if there is the interface involves too much decisions, thinking, it's not clear, it's too difficult for you in general, people might not be really maybe not interested, but might withdraw from using something because they just feel it's too much for them. And then what does it mean for our design? Well, it means that we have to design things for people who are always overloaded with doing other things, who might be already tired, because the cognitive load does not come only from the task of working with our dashboard, but also from all the tasks that people are engaged around. Usually when you sit at work and do something, you concurrently are watching something on your phone. You probably try to think about the upper level task that the task you are currently engaged with is connected to, and probably you are aware that there is something happening in your background, and maybe a couple of other things are happening. So only part of your cognitive power is dedicated actually to the work. You cannot dedicate all your power, all your skills, or your cognitive resources to one task. And it's similarly with people who will engage with your dashboards. They will dedicate just a part of their attention and cognitive resources to your dashboard. So you have to design it to be as easy and as straightforward as only possible. The only question is, what does it mean, easy and straightforward? Okay, so let's go one step further. Well, you can see here this lovely set of filters next to the term of choice overload. Okay, you probably have seen the sets of filters that look like that quite a few times. I see that all the time with my customers. My boss is calling stuff like that filter wreath or filter guirland. Yeah. Customers tend to have like 20 different filters in one dashboard. And is it a good idea? Well, you can discuss the problem from 2 points of view. One point of view is performance, but that's not my task today. So I'll concentrate on just psychological side. There is a law called Hicks' law, which says that the more choices we have, the more time it takes us to make a decision. And the time needed and the time needed grows exponentially. So it's a good idea to limit choices. If you think about the moment in the shop where you are offered something, well, Poland stands for apples, so let's talk about apples. I go to farmer's market next to my home and I would like to buy apples. And if there were two choices of apples, as in US, just red and green, that would be easy. I would take the ones that I feel like today. But there I have 15. So I go there and I ask, well, I would like to have apples that are good for eating. And I hear, well, it depends. If you want soft, then you would take that one. If you want the ones that are sour, you would take this, or this. And if you want it to be really sweet, you would take the other 3 species. And with every other species that is added to your choice, you feel like, oh, what should I choose? That's difficult. And it's similar when you look at filters in Tableau. So first of all, you open one filter. If you've got there 2, 3, maybe 5 options, that's pretty easy and pretty straightforward. But if you open it and like with one of my favorite customers, you've got inside 73,000 of products, unless you know what to choose, your choice might take forever, just forever. So one thing is how many options you've got inside of one filter. Then there is the question of how many filters you've got. If there are 2 or 3, you make quick choices. But if you've got 20, you have at least to read through the labels of all 20. So what can you do to limit the choice, the cognitive load related to choices? Well, first of all, you can make a hierarchy of filters. So using either only relevant value with apply to only relevant values. Yes, in filters, you can make kind of hierarchy of filters. When choosing something in one will limit the choices in the other. That's one thing you can do. Then you can use visibility zones and show some filters only when they are needed, not before that moment. So there are a couple of techniques that you can use to limit the choice overload. You can also chunk your filters. So first, ask your customer to choose, for example, category, then subcategory, etc. So yeah, this hierarchy of filters is always a good choice. And especially now we are living in times where we have lots of impulses with different information from everywhere. So we are less patient than people 10 years ago or 20 years ago used to be. And that's why limiting choices is especially good idea. So as you can see, this Hicks law, which says that the more time you need, the more choices you have, the more time you need, and the choice overload effect are strongly interconnected with one another. It's not important to remember how they are named. What I want you to remember is that people might get overloaded with information, with choices, with the decisions they have to take, and that might take their time, and they, if it's too difficult, they would withdraw. And the effect we want to get is flow, the ease of work. I will talk about the flow in a moment, but before that, I want to show you another thing that might really slow down the time we need for analyzing our charts and data. Usually charts are something we work with very quickly. If you look at a picture, you pick the highest value just instantly, the lowest value in a moment. That's easy. With one exception. Once you have to compare values, your mind slows down and concentrates only to some elements. And here I've got a nice example. Usually when I have on-site presentation, I would say, well, the left side of the room will analyze chart on left side, the right side should analyze chart on the right side, or I divide it between men and women. This time we do not have the luxury, so I will just tell you briefly what's about. If you would look only on chart on the left side, you would see that you've got here two boys. Adam and Piotr are typical Polish boy names. And we analyze their height. And we see that at age of 10, Adam is higher than Piotr. And then again, at the age of 12, Adam is again higher than Piotr. And that's perfectly okay, because usually children who earlier are higher, later also are higher. So it seems okay. And then we look at the other chart, same data, just differently presented. And now I can see that at the age of first one is there are wrong labels. So first one is Adam, the second one is Piotr. So Adam at the age of 10 was lower than at the age of 12. And then Piotr at the age of 12 was lower than at the age of 10. That sounds ridiculous, but you have to have the bars set together in a way that will allow you to see that. From the first chart, you cannot see, unless you look for that second time, that Piotr in first bar at age of 10 is higher than at age of 12. Why? Because you concentrate on comparing bars that are next to one another. So the lesson for dashboard developer is that you really have to think what people should see when comparing data. They won't be able to compare it both ways at the same time. So it is your responsibility and your choice to show what they should see. Okay, and comparisons really slows down our thinking and really makes us concentrated on one thing only. So that's very, very important. Okay, now we can go slightly further. You already know that there is a problem with comparing things. There is a problem and time that you have to dedicate to choosing things. And then surprisingly, there is something called the active user effect. What's the active user effect? Well, it's been discovered some time ago, or maybe it's been known always, but it's been named some time ago, that there are moments where we play with interface or we do something in something called flow. What is flow? Flow is the state where we are in balance between playing good with something, with playing good with something, because it's not too easy on one hand and not too difficult on the other. So on one way, it's difficult enough to give us some engagement and some challenge. On the other way, it's we've got enough skills to be able to meet the challenge. And masters of creating flow effects are creators of games, of computer games, PlayStation games, etc. All kind of games. They just make people engaged so much they can't see the world around. And I bet you know the state. Oh, it's so good. I can solve the problem. You may find it with, I don't know, Sudoku. You can find it when making crosswords. You may find it with logic puzzles, and definitely with working with Tableau. I must say I'm absolutely addicted to solving problems with Tableau. So is it possible to allow your users for the flow state? Yes. You need to provide them with the data, and the analyzing of the data will be the challenge. And then the ease of using dashboard should be such that they will instantly catch what's happening. And there's the active user paradox. What does it mean? Well, I grew up in 80s, and in 80s and early 90s, each guide was for each machine was like a huge book in several languages, especially in Europe. Yeah. And no one would read it, or hardly anybody would read it, but we all got these. And at one moment of time, someone discovered that actually people are not interested in reading that. And those who work most efficiently with products are usually so-called active users who never, ever read manuals. But they try to discover everything by themselves. They kind of think, well, I've seen so many phones so far that I will definitely understand how to use the one. Good example. Well, some 15 years ago, I was given mobile with all these smartphone functions, and that was something completely new for me. So I thought, well, phone is for making phone calls. Extra things might be sending text informations and maybe sending pictures. And then someone told me that actually that's a small computer, and it's not only for making phone calls, it's not only for texting, or I don't know, sending pictures, but that's also the place which might be central to working with everything else. And that was something this time I couldn't discover by myself, but once I learned that, it was obvious, and with every other phone, I could easily go any other smartphone without any instructions, without manual. I just discovered everything, and probably you know the feeling. So the lesson that I have learned was actually something called building mental model. A mental model is just kind of our how do we feel that something should look and work. If I think about the machine I keep in my hand as about smartphone, I will expect it to do what all other smartphones do. If I expect it to be old-style phone, I will expect it only to make phone calls, send text as messages, and maybe, which would be nice, to have one or two games, but easy ones. The simplest, okay? So what makes active users so good at their work is having certain mental models somewhere in their mind. Okay, and there is one more effect that comes with that, and that is really, really important for our work. It's Jacob's law. Jacob discovered or maybe figured out that people actually spend most of time at other websites. So at our website, they expect to find what they have found and seen everywhere else. What does it mean for us? Well, each dashboard that we are doing is actually found by our customers, by our viewers, as something in a web browser. So dashboard should be treated as any other website, which means that when you use things that behave like on other websites, people will have more ease of working with it. If you use, for example, icons that they have already found somewhere else, they will feel more familiar with that. If you have same layout and you use a same icon for filtering on all your dashboard in your company, people will feel more secure with that and they will like the dashboards. So that's a good investment to have a layout same for all the dashboards in your company, plus having the set of icons, set of buttons that will be used in same way all over the dashboards, because people will have more ease working with that. Okay. We know already that we've got these great users who do things quicker. They do it quicker because they have some general idea, and working on that general idea, they are able to find their way through new websites or dashboards, especially if there are elements that they look at often at other places. But how does it work? How is it possible that looking at one side, they understand what's happening at the other? Well, people generally have a tendency, and our brains have tendency to memorize things really simplified. So, and that's called the law of pregnancy. For some crazy reason, even though it has English name, they use German words inside. The author of that, whose name I've got somewhere in my notes, but probably the name does not matter, is of course German. First name Wolfgang, obviously. But what's about the law of the pregnancy? If you were to translate it into English, probably it would be the law of simplicity. If you look at the picture underneath, I've got there some fruit. Some raspberries, some blackberries, blackberries, blueberries, whatever, some berries. And when you look at the picture, you know that some of them will have some tiny hair on them, and some will not. That some are lighter, some are darker. You might also associate some tastes with them. You might know that the leaves might have tiny needles underneath. You might see that they reflect light in completely different way. You might also see that where is light falling at them from which side. Quite a lot of different information. You can see that something is different in touch than the others. Lots of information. And how will your brain see that, especially if these fruit are not familiar to you? Well, probably it would be something like that, if that complicated. So our brains tend to remember things as simplified as possible because it's just easier to remember it that way. So that's how people build these mental models. But if you want your dashboards to be really good, let them make it easier. So do not add extra elements that play no role. Just concentrate on what's most important and get rid of everything that is not needed. I quite often see dashboards where people add nice border lines around each element. And they've got 20 elements, and around each of them, there is a border line. And the border line is just distracting. That needs extra cognitive load to be perceived and to be also, and to be not seen as not meaningful. And that somehow gets into this way we see it. So don't do things like that. Just simplify as much as you can already without asking your brain to do that. Okay. So we already know that there are some resources we need, because otherwise you might find that thinking about your dashboard is painful. I sometimes say that generally thinking is painful, especially to those who are tired and who have too many concurrent tasks to cover. So if you want your customers, your viewers to suffer as little as possible, you have to think about limiting choices, not providing them with too much extra information, okay, and allowing them with nice data, interesting data, engaging data to get into the flow. The difficulty, the challenge should come from data. The ease should come with the design. Okay, and then there is a question, how much is too much? And that brings us to the idea of working memory. What is working memory? Well, that's how much we can keep just on a way in our memory. It lasts maybe 20 seconds, maybe something like that. If you think about, I don't know, logging into your bank account, and you would be asked there to type in some code to prove that you are you, and you take the code from your phone, and you have to memorize these 6 or 8 digits and type them in. You know what I am talking about. Working memory is the memory that takes the digits and keeps them till you type them in. And often occurs here also this position effect I mentioned in the morning, that you remember first and last best. It's easiest to type in the first number, the last number, but in between there might be some problems. Okay, so how much can the working memory take? And there are 2 schools. One of them would be Miller's law, that has been built in 1956, and that says that the average person can keep only 7 plus minus 2 elements, items, in their working memory. However, the size of what we understand as item might really differ. These are some kind of chunks of information, but what is a chunk of information is separate subject. And I will show it to you in a moment. And what does it mean for dashboard builder, dashboard developer? Well, we have to chunk our information in smaller elements and think about each element on a dashboard as a kind of chunk. Yeah. And does it mean that we need desperately to have no more than 9 elements on our dashboard? No, because we won't keep all these elements in our working memory. It's good to have some order of this, but the question is, what are we to take into our working memory? I will go one slide back. Look at the table. That's the kind of table, ugly, absolutely ugly, that I see with customers all the time. And there are like hundreds, if not thousands of rows, and then many, many columns. Does it make sense to have more than 5 or 7 or 9 columns? Not really, because if you read from left to right or right to left, whatever you prefer, whatever you need to memorize what is there in one row from left to right. If you don't memorize that, you won't be able to compare, or you won't be able to to draw conclusions from that. So if there are too many columns, you will get lost. You will have to go back and look at that again and again and again. That's not a good idea. And if you want to compare something in records, row by row, and you have, well, thousands of records, and you say your customers, please filter that out first. It will last long time till they are filtered. So they try to compare what they see at first. And well, with the record I've seen was 38,000 records in one table. By the way, the table had 180 columns. That was absolutely unreadable. To comprehend that, I would need probably a good drone to fly over that and look for some ideas and some insights. Absolutely impossible to comprehend. So that's it. Think about number of columns in your tables and think about the Miller's law. Try not to go beyond the number of maybe not even 9, but 5 or 7. Why 5 or 7? The competing theory says that our working memory is able to keep, four plus minus one element. So that's way less. And our working memory is also might be also overloaded with other work, and we need really to be rested and in good condition to be able to memorize 7 elements, and for more it's almost impossible. So remember, you create for people who usually are tired and have lots and lots of different tasks. Okay. That's probably about the effect. So I told you also a little bit about the table. And now, how about dividing elements into chunks? I've got here a long number, and the number is almost impossible to memorize. It's 48895276548. Okay, some numbers go one by one, so it's slightly easier, but anyway, the number is huge, and who would remember that? And actually, I remember it very well. Why? Because in my memory, it's chunked. 48. That's the old phone numbers to my family home, so to the place where I was raised. So starting 2 digits, it's area number for Poland. Then next 2 digits is area number for the part of Poland where I used to live. Then next 3 digits is area number for the part of the city where I lived. And then the last 4, the 6 there is a number that's been added in 70s, I guess, to original number, which was 548 from 60s. So for me, that's just 5 units: 48, 89, 5, 27, 6, and 548. And that's how I remember it. These are chunks. They are strictly mine. No one else would understand it the way, at least not all the elements, but each of us builds some way in our brain to memorize chunks in one way or the other. So if chunks are meaningful, and if 5 digits make a meaningful unit for you, it will work. You might remember 5-digit long numbers. That's possible, but they must be meaningful for you. Okay, so we discussed how much might be too much. And I told you also that it doesn't mean that we have to limit things we've got on dashboard. Actually, you probably have seen dashboard with hundreds of bars in several bar charts, or hundreds of cells in different tables. So the question is how to do that, to have all of that there and not to overload viewers, users, and ourselves. Okay. The thing is, to answer the question, what is the most important here? And in the beginning of the presentation, I told you that the origin of the presentation was presentation of my colleague. He was doing it in a way in Tableau and just presenting one effect, changing his dashboard a bit with the effect, and doing it effect by effect. His effects choice was completely different from mine. But in the end, he got something that was really neat, elegant, probably easy to use. I had only one problem. I couldn't tell what's the most important there. And that's probably one of the very most important questions you can ask about your dashboard. What is the most important here? Okay, so we've got 3 dashboards here, and let's have a look at them, each one by one. That's the dashboard created by Adrian Zinove. I love his work generally. I love him as a person. But the dashboard here is kind of tricky. You know, it's very beautiful. It's been chunked, and each element here is really well divided with certain distance from one another, so it's really easy to distinguish which part is which. There's a good title. It's easy to follow which element means what, because I've got here E, so I know I, so I know it's information. Here is element that tells me that here are filters perfectly. I know that if I click it, I will get some filters. There is something I can fill in again. There are some buttons which direct me somewhere farther with links. Yeah, there are some other icons. I understand that all, but there is one problem. I cannot tell what's the most important here. It's very beautiful, but when I look at that, my feeling is, well, I like it as a picture when I look at that once. But if I were to look at that hour by hour, because I have to follow changes hour by hour, I wouldn't be able to do that. There is an effect called banner blindness. If you look at too many elements that compete for your attention for too long time and they are too strong, you will get blind to them. You stop seeing them. So the key thing is to underline just what is needed and not much more. Now I will show you the other dashboard, one other dashboard. The one here is, again, beautiful. Elements are nicely divided, they are nicely spread, nicely chunked. Each of them is clear. Okay, my print screen is probably not perfect, so it's slightly blurred, but the original is really nice. And everything is clear with buttons and the way I should interact with that. There is just one problem. Hardly anything is underlined. Okay, I've got a little bit of color here and here and here, but unfortunately the color is with so small font that it's hardly visible. So the problem is just the opposite to the previous dashboard. We've got great dashboard that does not really show what's the most important. Nothing has been underlined. No color has been used for that. By the way, as a starting point, it's a very good dashboard for going further with that. Because if you start with something that is 100% gray and then try to decide what's most important and what to highlight, you will for sure succeed. So that's good starting point. That's not the best final product. Even though it's nice for your eyes, it doesn't make your eyes tired. Okay, and then I've got the third dashboard, and look at that. Again, it's clear how to interact with that. Again, everything is nicely laid out and chunked. But here we've got some underlines which tell me exactly at what to look. I've got this returned, which is actually the strongest point at the whole thing, one of the strongest points, okay? And this canceled. So I instantly know that these are the rows of data I should follow. Then I've got here the number which is definitely higher and definitely lowest. And again, I can easily follow that. With my KPIs, each of them has the number which is well visible, another part that is well underlined, and altogether it is really clear. The only fact that someone paid my attention to some 3 days ago during another webinar is that actually the one here is so much emphasized that it's hard to pay attention to anything else. And that's the only point you could here argue with. However, there are no dashboards that do not contain any mistakes. The only people who make no mistakes are those who do nothing. So it's worth just to follow the idea and to know if you have dashboard, if it even looks nice, ask yourself, what is the most important here? And the thing that comes to help here is von Restorff effect. Called also isolation effect. Hedwige von Restorff was a psychiatrist, children's psychiatrist in Germany of 1930s. And she has discovered, working with the children she worked with, that if she lets them remember, for example, list of words, they will remember the element that stands out, the element that is different from all the other. So with what we can elements make stand out? With a color, with a shape, with size, with empty space around, so-called negative space. Look at all these dashboards around charts. They have lots of negative space. Okay, wrong way to go. Also, that's not for dashboard, but movement is also another way to draw attention to one element, not all the other. But you need to remember also that we need to have been moderate with underlining. As I said, we've got this banner blindness. You probably know the effect when you watch website with lots of banners blowing up and appearing in front of your eyes, and after probably 5 minutes you're so annoyed with them you just avoid them, or you just don't pay any attention to them. That's banner blindness. There's also change blindness. So if you have too many elements competing at the same time, people won't pay attention to things that might be, according to you, the most important. Underline just a little bit, just enough for them to notice what is the most important, different, what has changed, what is the lowest, the highest, what is outside your expected corridor of values, etc. So decide ahead what is the most important and underline it. Okay. And there is one more thing you should memorize. If you go for underlining with color, which is very efficient way, remember of people with color blindness. Color blindness means that there are people who see colors differently, but it doesn't really matter if they name same color, red, green, blue, or whatever. It matters if they can distinguish between two colors. So if one color is really darker than the other, they will be able to distinguish. Look at the colors under the color wheel here. On the left side, we've got purples. On the right side, we've got yellows. But the purple here is really distinct from the one. And the yellow here is really distinct from the one. If you make your colors distinctive, that's absolutely enough. Okay, why have I talked about all these fantastic effects? Why have I mentioned them? I have even in my notes listed the most important ones, and that were isolation effect, choice overload, Higgs law, Jacob's law, Miller's law, lots of laws, lots of effects. Why I have mentioned all of them? Because they name what really means aesthetic in terms of dashboards. And there is one effect, one law, which I really like. And if you are to remember just one from the whole presentation, it's the one I want you to remember. It's called aesthetic usability effect. What it says? Well, it says that users often perceive aesthetically pleasing design as design that is more usable. What it means? Well, people find nice dashboard, the dashboard that they find nice, and they feel that it works better than the other ones. They even work quicker with that. And there's an interesting story behind that, because that's the effect of studies in Hitachi, I guess, Hitachi Center, whatever it was called, by two Japanese scientists in back in 1995 and following years. And what they were studying were the interfaces of ATMs, of the cash machines, and they presented to the people they surveyed 26 different designs of ATMs and asked which one is better, which one works better, which one they like most, and then afterwards they were testing how people would work with this. And it proved that with the things they found earlier nicer, they worked quicker and more efficient. So what was perceived as aesthetically pleasing? First of all, things that are colorful. So black and white is not enough, as we have seen a moment ago. Then another element is this clear layout. So you need to have a layout that is well organized, well chunked, with negative space between elements of your layout. And then for the text, all of them need to be clear. All of them need to be as short as possible. Okay, short enough, but long enough to be meaningful, and short enough not to overwhelm. So all these things are important when building. It's important to have nice, aesthetically pleasing design. But nicer products are less criticized, by the way. But there is one problem which you might approach if you make too beautiful dashboard and send it for testing. If it looks too nice, people will not notice the real problem. They might just overlook something that they should find during the test. So my pro tip is leave there some typos. People will find typos always. Typos are easy to find, and if once people find typos in the design, they will be like more eager to look for more mistakes, because someone who left typos must have left more design and development problems inside, more mistakes. So yeah, leaving typos, leaving something small that you will see, you will know where it is, and it will be easy to correct for yourself afterwards, is a good way to have dashboards that will be thoroughly tested. Okay. And just to sum up, as I said, it's very difficult to remember all these nice, long scientific names and all the effects. But if you think about the logic that was underneath them, you will find this handful of tips pretty obvious. And I hope it is so. Avoid too many elements because they might overwhelm. Avoid unnecessary functionalities. Well, I work as Tableau consultant for quite a long time, so I have created quite a few dashboards, some of them really good, but not all, believe me. There are plenty of mistakes that I have done. And one of the exercises I was to do was to refresh a dashboard after 5 years with one customer. And at the moment, I have found that some functionalities that I have sticked in here, like parameters for choosing the color legend or something like that, even though they were nicely labeled and nicely described with instructions, no one paid attention to them. And actually, no one knew after some time that they are there. Why? They didn't need it. They didn't go for that. It was beyond their mental model, so to say. So when I was refreshing, I just got rid of at least half of the functionalities, leaving only what people needed. Then one another tip is use layouts and concepts familiar to your users. If they know some icons, use the icons. If you have seen something interesting in other dashboards that has been created in your company, go for the same concept. If it's nice, your customers probably will also like it. Then separate all the elements individually and group them. If you have charts that are interconnected, place them next to one another. If you have elements that are slightly less connected, maybe give some negative space between them. Limit the number of choices. That should be already obvious. Group choices visually again. If you have, for example, filters that filter your data geographically, make them one group of filters, and then the one that are product filters make as the other group with bordering inside filter container. That's pretty easy. Then ensure readability of fonts and colors. About colors, I have mentioned you already the problems with color blindness. The other problem that might appear is contrast. If the color is not distinctive enough from the background, it will be difficult to read. And there are standards for that, very, very strict standards for internet with certain number limits, but you do not have to remember that. You can go for a website like this WebAIM here, and you can check it there. That's very good for checking if you have enough contrast in your dashboard. And if you will have enough contrast between, for example, text and background, it will be easy to read. And one more tip, if you are using fonts for internet, please stick to something called no serif, the fonts that are sans serif. You might not know what sans serif mean, but I bet you are able to imagine Times New Roman and Arial fonts. And if you think about Times New Roman and letter I, you will feel that there are tiny flags to the side in this letter I. The tiny things to the side are called serifs. And the serifs are good for reading in internet only if you have very big fonts. So for titles, they are fine. But if you have the body text, please stick to fonts that are sans serif, like Cambria, Calibri, etc. Okay, and one more thing. Be cautious with the fonts, okay? And one more thing, remember, the main idea is not to make your recipient, your viewer, tired. If you think about eyes of your viewer and avoid things that might make the person tired, you will be on your way. You will be on a good way. And that's it. So I would like to thank you for that. If you would like to connect with me, there's my LinkedIn account under the QR code. And before I stop speaking, I probably talked slightly too long, but I hope you will you won't be angry at me for that. One more moment. There is nice event that if you would like, I would like to invite you to. Actually, in Polish Tuk, on 10th of December, we will be running something called Holiday Tip Battle. Tableau tips is something that always make everybody engaged, and you can learn a lot from that. One of the competing persons will be me, but I'm not the only. With me, there will be Daniel Bradley and Sirena Parslow. So, well, good specialists who know what they do. They both were in DataFam during last year, DataFam Slam Europe. They were in DataFam team. So yeah, good Tableau tip experts. I will put the link in a moment to chat. So if you feel like joining us for the event, it's I think 8 p.m. your time, so not that bad, even though it's European. If you feel like joining us, you will be really welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agata. That was amazing. I've taken lots and lots of notes. I have a whole notebook full of notes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think that was very interesting, and it's really helpful to have such sessions because I think most of us learned by meeting with stakeholders, making the mistakes over and over up until the point where you improve. But having
Yeah.
sessions like this really helps because there are people who've done the research and have done the work like you have and know best practices and best tips. And it's good to help people who are starting out to have this in mind as they go along. I think I'll say two things I picked up from your talk, and then maybe Tony can as well. And if you have a few minutes left, we could try maybe one or two questions from the chat. And then yeah, we'll go and watch your talk back over and over again because there were a lot of different things that I personally want to go back and try out again. I shared the 3 dashboards in the chat while you were presenting them so that everyone can go and take a look. So I'll say one thing that I got, things to avoid, and then things that you should do. So things to avoid, which I have done in many, many dashboards, is information overload. You are building a dashboard for a team and you assume that putting everything that they need on one single dashboard is what will be helpful to them. But then the dashboard doesn't pick up. People don't use it. They prefer to use the simple Excel sheets that they had set up before you showed up because you're not building with their daily function in mind. So less is more. That's the one thing that you should think about. That's what I got. Less filters is actually a good thing. Less columns in a table is actually a good thing. Less charts on one single view is actually a good thing. If you know what you want them to see beforehand, you build with that in mind, and less is always more. So that's one thing I got. Things to avoid is things to avoid. I've said things to do. Simplify charts by making comparisons clear. So if you want to show them one thing compared to something else, try and make that as simple as possible. Make sure they see exactly what you want them to see at first glance. And that could be done by maybe rearranging the chart in a specific way or organizing colors in a specific way so that they see exactly what you want them to see at first glance. So that was what I got from the talk. So let me hand it over to Tony. I think he also has a few things because we were chatting on the side and he also has lots of notes, just like me.
That's right, Mary. Thank you for that. For me, it's more of questions. Like I wrote questions to ask because as you are presenting, one thing that came to mind is with Tableau, the different containers. How do you approach how your layout will look like? There is a chart that you share that showed the different containers and what to put and what not to put. What necessitates that? Because I'll tie that to what you said about limiting the number of choices. So with that, is there like a rule of thumb? That's my first question.
The problem is that there is no rule of thumb. The rule of thumb is once you build your dashboard, eliminate everything you can, but not more, which is kind of no rule. But what I do usually when I build a dashboard, I try to have in the beginning a layout. So I build just one dump chart, place it in the middle, and build everything around, and try to think about that in detail, like having good filters, place to hide these filters, maybe instructions, place for title, etc. And then I start drawing on paper what charts I would like to have. Well, at first I, of course, for a long time interview people to learn how they will work with the data and what they actually use, how they want to see that, what is the most important, etc. So once I start drawing on paper, very ugly drawings, you wouldn't imagine how ugly, then I kind of figure out where to put what, in what order, and how much of that I need, and how I can chunk it into dashboards, because it doesn't have to be in one dashboard. And what's more, we've got now this visibility zones function, which allows us to hide half of the dashboard till it's needed. So that's another thing you can do. You do not have to show everything at once. You can show it once it needs to be discovered. So that's how I do that. It's not probably the rule of the thumb, but yeah, one voice among many.
Okay, thank you. But a follow-up question would be, assuming you're building for the first tab, maybe is a strategic dashboard for the exco. Then over and above, you need an operational dashboard where it drills down to the minute details and all that. So I believe for the operational, it will need a couple more information, because it will be used in making the understanding where, what drove what and all that, as opposed to the strategic executive dashboard that just drives numbers and what's happening. So for the operational.
Unless I'm forced to, I never do that in one do both in one dashboard. Sometimes I'm forced to do that, but usually I try to have the strategic one and then link it maybe with some navigation to the other dashboards that contain more data. They might even need separate data sources on different levels of aggregation. So one needs to be very quick. The strategic one needs to be very quick, and with the overview you can use for that aggregated data. And then when you go to the one that is like operational, you might need there much more data, but people will be also more patient with that. You can for strategic, you need to load it in 5 seconds. For operational one, depending on the level, or is it the lowest level or slightly upper, it might be between 30 and 50 seconds. So that's way more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Tina, you have questions?
No, actually, I think you've covered it in some sort of way. So maybe we could try take one question from the chat or two, and then we call it a Saturday and everyone goes to enjoy their weekend. But I will share the call that we've recorded today on YouTube, and it could be watched back later on during the week.
Okay. Should I look for a question on chat? I can see one from Bradley. how do you deal with customers who don't like graphs and prepare tables? Isn't that information overload? Oh, it is. And I just am in the process of preparing a presentation about exactly that for data from London. And I hope it will be recorded later to give you the wider explanation, but in short, the first thing I do is to, instead of typical table, to draw table with bar charts beneath. So just bar chart with all the labels. Never ever take away numbers from people who demand numbers. Otherwise, they will be furious. You can slowly teach them that visual hints are their friends. And once you teach them that, you can give them slightly less numbers once they learn what they are really looking for. And that's my way. I go step by step. First, they ask for table. Okay, I draw table, and sneakily I put there some bar charts, usually really gray with just red with negative numbers or something like that. So, and really not much color, something that makes the numbers still stand out, but gives the graphic hint. And that's my short way to do that. Plus I've got several techniques of limiting the number of rows and limiting the numbers of columns, but that's for separate presentation. And as I said, I'm preparing that for beginning of December for a presentation in London, and I hope it will be recorded one way or the other. So just look at my LinkedIn profile, and I bet till February maybe it will be shared there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, I think we can pause there. Thank you so much for your time. We've learned so much. And as I said, even after today's session, we will continue learning because this will be shared on a public platform and we'll rewatch it a few times again.
Okay.
And yeah, I think we can close the session there and enjoy our weekends. But thank you so much, and we hope to have you back. We'll join the Tableau tip battle session in December.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. It sounds very fun. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It was really a pleasure to talk to you, and I keep my fingers crossed for your Tableau user group. Okay?
Yes.
Original way and Polish way, we do that way, so I keep it for you. Yeah, and I hope we'll see again in some time.
Yes, definitely.
We'll definitely see. Have a lovely weekend, Agata.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.